Next bill is House File 931, Representative Nash. And I noticed there are 3 testifiers listed. One is remote. The other 2 may sit at the testifiers table. And you may introduce your bill.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, and given that I am not a member of the committee, if you would be so kind as to move my bill before the committee, and I believe we are sending it to the General Register.
I would move that House File 931 be recommended to pass and be referred to the General Register.
Thank you,
Proceed.
Mr. Chair. House File 931 is really based in solving a problem that I would argue most of us have probably had, and I know that my testifiers will speak to the same thing. I would imagine most of us have gotten calls from panicked constituents that have said, Jim, well, if your name's not Jim, but they said to me, Jim, I have an actual ballot in the mail, and who sent me this, and why did they send me this? It's freaking me out, and it has my name on the application. I'm very concerned. And 9 times out of 10, after I walk through it with them, or they maybe send me a cell phone picture, it turns out that it's just an application for absentee ballot. And I'm not trying to take that opportunity away, but I'm trying to just add some clarity to the process to say, we want folks to not get freaked out. I think that we can all agree that a freaked out voter is a bad situation. But the bill effectively says that we're going to put on somewhere on the envelope that this is not on behalf of a unit of government. This is not an official ballot. And then that it would disallow the ability to pre-populate the application for the absentee ballot. And I think that this creates for people who receive this, whether they're my son who was a military member when he got his absentee ballot, he said, Dad, I got the official one, but then I also got a handful of other ones, and I'm not sure what to do. But then I also talked to a fair number of older people in my community, and they get a little concerned, a little worried, and I want to make sure that we're addressing that so that no one feels like they're being assaulted with lots of live ballots and that they don't call the counties, which I know that several of my county-based testifiers will say that they take a lot of phone calls. So this is really rooted in the idea of making it very, very clear that the thing that you're getting in the mail is just a request from an organization that can send these out to make sure that you're getting your absentee ballot. So that's the genesis of the bill, Mr. Chair. There is submitted testimony from Common Cause, and I think they're in the room, but they submitted a written piece of testimony for you. Saying that they are in favor of the bill. They are a nonpartisan organization that supports good elections. And then we have several testifiers, if we could move to those, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Nash. And I believe our first testifier is on Zoom. If you would identify yourself, affiliation for the record, and please begin.
Sure, thank you, Chair Quam, members of the committee. Good afternoon. I'm Michael Stolberger, Director of Property and Environmental Resources for Blue Earth County, and my department is responsible for administering the election for about 40,000 registered voters in the county. I'm here today on behalf of the Minnesota Association of County Officials. MACO represents all 87 counties' auditors, treasurers, recorders, and finance officers, including elections administrators. I'm here to express our association's support for the objectives presented in House File 931. As described, 931 requires disclosure statements on envelopes and materials such as the sample ballots and absentee ballot applications when they are being sent by non-elections officials. It also requires absentee ballot applications to be sent blank without pre-printed voter information. These items are included in MACO's legislative platform. We consider them administrative changes that address the cost-effectiveness of elections activities and reduce administrative burden. They also enhance voter understanding and will reduce confusion or mistrust of election processes. As the association crafted its platform this year, we heard repeatedly from county election administrators across the state that the volume of unsolicited absentee ballot applications being sent to voters caused unnecessary confusion and in sometimes anger. It's the county elections workers who have to address these questions during the busiest times of an election season. A disclosure on the envelope and on the forms would greatly reduce the number of calls. It also would allow elections administrators time to do other important work associated with the absentee voting process and preparing for election day activities. Similarly, we heard from elections administrators that pre-filled applications are just as problematic. While the forms are populated with publicly available information, that information is oftentimes incomplete or it's simply not accurate. These issues mean the application cannot be accepted. And when an application can't be accepted, the voter must be contacted, a new form must be sent out, and in some cases, balloting materials are sent out as non-registered, leading to even more confusion and more work for the voter. A worst-case scenario would be issues with an application that are so severe that they delay the process so much that the voter risks being disenfranchised because they run out of time and options to actually cast their ballot in the election. Election administrators pride themselves in ensuring every eligible voter who wishes to vote and cast a ballot can do so in the fashion that works best for them in an efficient manner. Election administrators view pre-filled applications as a roadblock to these efforts in many cases. As I mentioned, MACO has heard from many counties on this issue, especially on the pre-filled applications and the third-party mailing of absentee ballot applications. Here are some specific concerns they shared with us. Pre-filled applications come back from recently married voters with that voter's former name provided. The voter's name is oftentimes already updated in our voter registration system due to our ongoing list maintenance. This mismatch of names oftentimes results in that voter's status in voting being changed to challenged. We also get calls from families who are unhappy or suspicious that their deceased relative receives materials because an outdated mailing file was used to mail out an unsolicited application. We also have heard multiple examples of counties responding to concerns about perceived fraud because the voter receives multiple applications for absentee ballots after they've already sent back the official one from the county or applied online to receive a ballot. We also have way too many examples of duplicate applications being submitted that require much of the administrator's time in actually determining what is the most current application and seeing whether or not that voter requires a new absentee ballot or if they just filled out another form. The last example we'll share with you is also one that we received multiple examples of, and that's where applications come back with incomplete information because the form is only partially filled out. We may have the voter's date of birth, but not their year and their date, and that requires us to do extensive follow-up and oftentimes results in sending out another application at the cost of the county. In closing, MACO supports the objectives presented in House File 931 and appreciates your attention on the matter. We look forward to additional conversations on this subject and other elections administrative items that we hope can be considered to address some of the cost effectiveness of elections activities, reduce some of the administrative burden with elections administration, and enhance voter understanding and transparency. I'll conclude my testimony now, but I'm always available for questions and would look forward to answering any of them. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Hildegard.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thank you very much. My name is Matt Hilgart. I work for the Association of Minnesota Counties. The Association of Minnesota Counties represents all of Minnesota's 87 county governments. I want to thank you for the time today and also for Mr. Stahlberger so eloquently stating and itemizing the reasons for support of this bill. We do see this as a good governance issue and a good public policy, and hopeful that it is supported in a bipartisan fashion. And it really is, from our members' perspective, an issue of common sense too. And I want to thank Representative Nash for bringing it forward this particular year. I think there's been different authors in the past. The real issue here is that I think everyone would agree that at a core principle, we don't want folks emulating or even creatively marketing materials as if they're government themselves. I'm sure folks in this room have received even these solicitations for copies of your birth records or certificates that make it appear like you're getting the record or the solicitation from government itself. I know I've fallen prey to that and actually thinking, do I really need to send $30 into Hennepin County? It's pre-filled and everything for a copy of my birth record. It even looks like it's from Hennepin County stationery. These kind of things just mislead people for doing things that they shouldn't necessarily, they haven't asked for. Here we're talking about one of the most sacred acts that we can take place in a democracy, which is voting itself. And we don't want there to be confusion. And right now there is, and that's what you're hearing from Mr. Stahlberger. That's what you hear from our members at our conferences. We put on sessions with the League of Minnesota Cities, the Association of Minnesota Counties, and even with the assistance of the Secretary's State Office before elections to talk about misinformation and how to respond to allegations of certain questions from the community. One of the most popular questions is I've received multiple ballots. or even, as Mr. Stahlberger said, someone who has unfortunately recently been deceased and said, someone sent me a ballot for my recently deceased family member. Well, one, it wasn't a ballot. It was a ballot application, but it's causing confusion. And we just want to be clear that we know the undercurrent of why these ballot applications are being sent is to drive up voter participation. Everyone wants voter participation to be the highest that it can. But we can also do that. Two things can exist at once. We can be doing those efforts, and we can also be making clear that this isn't government correspondence. And so we hope that that just notice will just cut down on some of that. And the last thing I'd say is any attempt I can just to give glowing reviews of our election administrators in the state, I will. Mr. Stahlberger speaks on behalf of Minnesota Association of County Officers. You'll hear more hopefully this year about the work that they do during election time of the year. And the fact is that the need for their time to be used elsewhere in responding to confusion on this or reaching out to people and saying, hey, this isn't filled out right or the information isn't matching up, it is real. And so we do feel that this would also be an efficiency for staff time as well. And with that, I'm happy to stand for any questions. Thank you.
And thank you. Ms. Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Nash. I'm Nicole Freeman from the Office of the Secretary of State. I'm here today to speak on House File 931. I want to thank Representative Nash. We've worked with you over the last several years on language, and so I want to echo what the other testifiers have mentioned. Our office also does receive a number of confused calls from voters ahead of each statewide election, wondering where this application came from and things like that. So I usually have a script detailing, turn the application over, or look at the outside of your envelope, right, and who sent that to you, to be able to clarify where it came from and why it showed up on their doorstep. So the office is supportive of the provisions in subdivision 1. I think we still have a little bit of hesitation about subdivision 2, and we understand that the bill, seeks to prevent a private organization from pre-printing voter information, and we really appreciate Representative Nash's clarity in who is prevented from or prohibited from pre-filling the application information in. And I think what we would like to continue working with the representative on is, assuming that the required information is presented on the application, if it is pre-filled, how can we make sure that the voter themselves are not penalized for that, and that the voter themselves wouldn't have their application rejected in the situation that if they used a pre-filled form. And so I think that's what we'd like to just continue to work on and clarify, but otherwise appreciate the spirit of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Freeman. And I did have one question. How many people are receiving these that are not on the voter rolls, are not registered?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have that number. My understanding is that these are the mailing lists are typically derived from the public information list. And so as that list is changing every day, as people move in and out of the state or register and pass away, right? That list is changing every day. And so it's possible someone could get one who was no longer an active voter in Minnesota. But again, my understanding is it's coming from the public information list of registered voters.
Thank you, Ms. Freeman. I can tell you positively because people have brought things to me from people that have not lived at that address for sometimes a decade or more, and people have been deceased again, sometimes for a decade or more. So thank you. And we have someone new. Can you please introduce yourself and affiliation?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members, my name is Kirk Peterson. I'm one of the lobbyists for Hennepin County. I wasn't on the list, but Representative Nash asked me to testify. We also support the objectives of House File 931. As Mr. Hilgart and Mr. Stahlberg laid out pretty clearly, so I don't need to go into a lot of detail, but during election season, our staff is just inundated with calls from people saying, hey, I got something in the mail. Did this come from you? What is this? Or they show up at our voting locations and try and cast a ballot or present the material. and they don't know what it is, and so our staff is caught in the position of having to explain, this is not an official government document. And so having it clearly marked on the material, on the envelopes that they received, I think will just really remove a lot of confusion for voters and for residents. It'll ease a lot of burden on our already overworked election staff, but still allow the third parties to get out the information that they need. So Representative Nash, thank you for bringing this.
Well, thank you. Any other testifiers from the audience? Seeing none, does anyone wish to move an amendment? Representative Freiberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're not actually going to offer the amendments at this time. We thought about it and decided not to. It was hasty. There were some incorrect cross-references and so forth. I do have a few questions, though, for the bill author when we get to that point.
Mr. Freiberg.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Freiberg.
So thank you for bringing this again, Chair Nash. I can certainly appreciate the issue Bill's trying to address. I do have some questions about the scope of the bill, though. We heard this bill in the last biennium, and there were several questions raised in committee. And I see the bill language is exactly the same as it was in the last session also, so there haven't been any changes to it. And I thought one of the committee members 2 years ago had an illuminating example. He mentioned there was an elderly woman in his district. He was going door to door. She said she wasn't really able to vote in person anymore. So he suggested that she vote absentee instead. And she said she didn't really know how to do that. And so he went back to his car, got an absentee ballot application, gave it to her, and she sent it in. And he said that every 2 years she would contact him, ask for an absentee ballot application, and he would mail it to her. So it just is that I mean, it's just, if you read the terms of the bill, it seems like that situation might get covered by it. Is that kind of what you're getting at here, Chair Nash?
Representative Freiberg, because of the changes made in the last legislative session, that person can now be on the permanent list. And so I think maybe there's a solution to that. To the author.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Representative Freiberg. When I brought the bill to the committee the last time, the person bringing those points said, oh, I'm happy to stop by your office and talk with you. And then when I would try to talk with him, he didn't have the time. So it's awfully difficult to address someone's concerns when they aren't interested in engaging in the conversation. What I'm trying to get done is, you've just heard from county officials, you've heard from the Secretary of State, you've heard from a number of other people who are trying to address this issue. We're trying to eliminate wasted staff time. I think that in the case of the representative that you're talking about, they helped them write it out in person, I believe. And that is not something that I'm trying to go after. What we're trying to go after is a pre-populated form that shows up in your mailbox in an envelope that doesn't clearly distinguish that this is not from an official government entity that you have requested a ballot from. So I think that that's clear enough, and that the example that you use is trying to find an example to give you a reason to vote no on the bill. But I'm happy, and I did say this to the Secretary of State's office, and I'm willing to work on this with them. If you have concerns, I'm happy to hear what you would offer as an alternative. This is going to the General Register, and I'm happy to, if we agree upon something, to do an author's amendment on the floor to give you some greater clarity and some comfort language so that you can feel good about voting for the bill.
Representative Freiberg.
Thank you for that. Okay, I still think the language might be a little broad. So another question, if the absentee ballot application is sent by a political party or candidate committee, isn't there already a prepared and paid for disclaimer on those materials?
To the author.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Freiberg, this is trying to get at anybody. I mean, you and I have each, I would imagine, been mailed things from people who are not a political party. Pick a thing, the Sierra Club, the NRA, any group in between all of those. We're trying to make sure that we're adding clarity for all of them. And the only way to get clarity for all of them is to put it in statute that covers everybody.
Representative Freiberg.
Thank you. Last question is, what constitutes a sample ballot? Because this does apply to sample ballots as well. I mean, and sometimes things by outside entities are labeled sample ballots, even if it's not what we intuitively think of as a sample ballot. So it might say sample ballot and then just consist of nothing but like a big glossy picture plus the name of 4 candidates, would that sort of thing be covered by this language?
Well,
To the author.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It says absentee ballot. Wouldn't necessarily affect a sample ballot. A sample ballot is something that, as you know,
Line 1.15. Oh, yeah, also 1 point,
Representative Freiberg, go ahead.
sorry, sample ballot is referenced on line 1.15.
if you would have let me finish, I would have said that the sample ballot is going to be included in the same envelope that says this is not an official ballot. So, I mean, it's pretty clear. And you've been on a sample ballot. We've all been on sample ballots. We've all had, I think you said a shiny, glossy picture that says, vote Jim Nash, vote Mike Freiberg in the next election. If it comes in that envelope, it is prepared and paid for by pick an organization, but it should say this is not an official ballot. And I think we can trust our members of the public to not pick a shiny, glossy document that they get to think that that's actually a ballot they're going to put into a tabulation machine. So I think it's clear enough. I think we're trying to nitpick something that is pretty clear for people of the public. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Greenman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Representative Nash. I've seen this. We've talked about this language a lot since I was on the committee. I know that when we, in 2022, when this was in committee, we added some definitions. I think part of that was to deal with the issue of the sample ballot that kept coming up. I don't think that's nitpicky. I think putting definitions in is good and important. I think what you're trying to do, if I'm understanding, is make it so that people don't confuse something that's sent to them that looks like a ballot. And so defining what sample ballot is, I don't know if you're amenable to that, but I'd love to talk to you about it afterwards. My question is actually to the concern that I know was raised a few times, and it's actually probably a question to, I don't know if Michael Stolberger is still on, or if maybe one of our, Mr. Hilgert, or,
Mr. Hilgert is here.
okay.
Mr. Hilgert, again, give your name and then respond. Thank you.
Matt Hilgert with the Association of Minnesota Counties.
Representative Greenman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think one of the concerns that was raised was if this prohibition goes into effect and let's say a voter gets in the mail a pre-populated absentee ballot and sends it back in, how would a county elections official deal with it? And is there a concern? I think the concern has been raised over and over again that it potentially could be rejected because the law prohibits those forms.
Mr. Hilgert.
Mr. Chair, Representative Greenman, I think that's a good question. And honestly, I saw a little bit of an email back and forth between Mr. Stolberger and Ms. Freeman on this particular issue. I think there's a hope that it would be accepted and that there'd be communication. But if we need clarification either outside this committee or within the bill, I think that depending on the author's interest, that's something we would be interested in.
Representative Greenman.
And Mr. Chair, if I could, before we go back to Representative Greenman.
to
Thank you,
the
Mr. Chair. And Representative Greenman, you and I have a good history together, working together as best we can. I am amenable to, if you want to offer some definitions to clarify this, I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to do that as it goes to rules and then the general register. But here's the thing. You've now heard from Hennepin County. You've now heard from multiple county organizations. You've all probably got them yourselves. I'm willing to work with you on tightening things up, but I think the genesis of the bill is almost incontrovertible. It's a problem that we need to address.
Representative Greenman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I agree. I actually, to Chair Quam's point, one of the reasons we wanted to pass the permanent absentee list is so that people could sign up, and people who wanted to get lists, it's good for our county officials because they don't have to send out a absentee ballot form, and folks who want to be on the list are on the list. And so I think that that you referenced, Chair Quam, that change I know folks are using, and hopefully will do a lot of the work that you want to do. But I hear you in the we do, and I share your values of wanting to reduce voter confusion. I think we want to ensure that folks can get registered that paperwork can be processed effectively. One of the things I know about pre-population, having worked on voter registration a lot, is one of the biggest reasons that voter registrations are rejected is handwriting. And so it's why online voter registration is great, is because folks put it in and there's no handwriting issues, there's no data entry issues. And so moving from a paper form to an online form is actually good for moving folks who want to be registered from that form onto the rolls. We know that. The evidence around the country shows that. And so part of the pre-population, I think, is trying to avoid those handwriting issues. That being said, I hear you, and I'd love to work with you. I do want to make sure, and any time an election official doesn't know, that's a problem we've created. We should, if we're going to pass this bill, we should make sure that we are telling folks and holding, and I think this is what the Secretary of State said. I hear this is what some of the counties have been talking about too, that if it is accurate, if it's a voter who gets a pre-populated form, it's not their fault. They send it in. It's accurate information that meets all the requirements of the voter registration laws, that should be accepted. And I think if we agree on that, I think putting that in the language is both good for clarification. It's also good for the counties that are not making them guess. So we should continue talking about it. It's why I came to talk to you about it. If that's something you're amenable to continue working on the language. I know you've been working on this a long time. Today, I think I'm going to vote no. There's too many concerns, but would like to talk to you about it before it goes to the floor.
To the author.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, Representative Greenman, my office door is open. I'm not sure that our badges get each other to each other's floors. That's fixable, by the way. We should endeavor to do so. But I think that I'm happy to work with you because I'm grateful to agree, or to hear that you agree that this is a problem. I think that has been contested in years past, that it's not a problem. I think you've heard clearly from county officials and you've heard from the Secretary of State that this is an actual problem. So if a minor language problem is addressable, I'm happy to do that. I don't know that with my agreement that it's worth voting no on, because I will give you my word, and you've heard my word before, and I have never backed out of my word. Then I'm happy to work with you to get where everybody can have a kumbaya moment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
But seeing no other, did you have a closing statement, or?
Vote green.
With that, I renew my motion that House File 931 be recommended to pass and be referred to the General Registry. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. No. And it passes.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chair and
you.
Committee.